This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions.
This is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So what I like to do on this channel is take institutional grade style of indicators, okay, and put them into a workable and simple approach. And I got a question about how to use ADX. Sometimes I mention strong ADX, sometimes I mention low ADX. I want to get into the details of this and keep it real simple. All right, so I'm going to give you some examples to make this crystal clear for you. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you want to learn more about some of these techniques, you can start with my book. You can click the link in the description if you want to find out more. And also, if you do enjoy this type of content, please hit that like button and also subscribe. Okay, I'm going to start out with the chart or the grid of Intel, all right, with my monthly in the bottom left, weekly bottom right, daily in the upper right, and then I got another weekly up here, but we're going to focus in on these three charts right now. So what I want to do is sort of look at this Intel and show you how we flip from periods of, so not only do we flip from periods of trending to not trending, but we also go through periods of expanded volatility and lower volatility, all right? What we're looking for is a low volatility, low trend strength. That is where we have the low ADX pattern, okay? The low ADX pattern is what was taking place here in Intel. All right, this is where we don't have any trend. We're not trending in one direction or the other, but we also don't have a lot of volatility. You see how quiet this was? And the other thing that we want to make sure, if you're looking for a low ADX pattern like we have here, and low ADX is defined by when the blue line, this ADX line, and I use a 13.8 for the settings, 13 for the DI, 8 for the ADX, all right? Now, when the 8 ADX has dropped down below 25 and stays down there for an extended period, now I would say somewhere in the area of 25 to 30 bars is sort of the minimum you're looking for. We are now at that point. Once we have that, we want to draw trend lines on price, draw the trend lines on price, and wait for a breakout, okay? Now, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to look at where we just kind of take out this, we go through this sideways line. We've got a sideways line in place. We've actually got a sideways line on both directions, all right? Both to the upside and to the downside. We can connect the pivot highs and pivot lows to create a sideways channel, okay? Now, with a sideways channel, we know that we can break in either direction. All right, it's possible that we could break to the downside. Now, typically what I'm doing is I'm using the higher time frame to help me decide whether I think there's a breakout to the upside or a breakout to the downside taking place. And when I look at this, I can see what was taking place on the monthly chart. We had a low that was made here, okay? And then we made a lower low here a few years later. And we're making a lower low in price, but we're making a significantly higher low in the MACD. Now, these are kind of far apart. It's not typical. That's not really the typical type of divergence I would be looking for. But what I will say is that if I get this sign that the momentum is starting to shift a little bit, and the more important thing to me is, here's the low here. Notice how we broke below this low, and then we didn't really make any downside. We didn't really have any downside follow through. We just kind of went sideways from there and then turned back up through that 25 level. Okay, so once we see that, we know that the bias is probably to the upside. Now, I'm going to give you a couple other examples today where we know that the bias is up. But in this case, we have this kind of stock that's been going down. Doesn't show a lot of downside push after a break to a new low. And then we have this sideways line that's created, okay? And you can see the volume pattern showing signs of improvement. The green bars poking up through the average volume more and more through this basing period, all right? So we have this sideways line. We're looking for a breakout. Now, what I want to point out is if this weren't going sideways, let's say this pattern was like this, let's say this is making higher highs and higher lows, and this is going sideways. This has a low ADX condition. Well, I wouldn't consider this bullish, okay? Where you're making higher highs and higher lows, but the ADX isn't going anywhere, all right? That's not a low ADX pattern. The only time I'm looking for a low ADX breakout is where I have a sideways line or a downward trending line or a 1, 2, 3 reversal pattern, something like that that is developing during this low ADX condition. Okay, so remember 25 to 30 bars going sideways. We can draw trend lines on price and create some type of pattern, whether it be an ascending triangle, a rectangle, could be a triangle pattern. You could look for anything like that, right? We can look for something like that if it's developing that way. Or just a regular rectangular pattern just going sideways, okay? This is that rectangular pattern. So we get the breakout. Now look at what happens and watch what happens. So price is making higher highs and higher lows above a rising 18, which is above a rising 40, and we have an ADX that's strong at this point, okay? Now, this time frame, which was a low ADX pattern, okay, is now a strong ADX pattern. And it's confirming this up move. So every time we make a new high, we know we can buy a pullback. It's sort of telling us that if ADX is this strong, if we pull back towards the 18, it's probably telling us that we've got another leg to the upside, okay? And it typically means that we're going to at least come back and test that high, if not make a new high, okay? Now, if we have that in place, we can then go down to the lower time frame and look for setups, right? Now, a lot of times when you go through a consolidation like this and you get quiet, you go through 25 bars of going sideways and you create a low ADX pattern on this time frame. So we've got strong ADX on this time frame with support from the 18 week, okay? And then on this time frame, we're drawing trend lines on price and essentially drawing in this little downtrend line. You could really connect it from either one of these. And we're looking for strength to the upside to tell us that things are getting ready to go here. All right. And that's sort of a signal to get us back in this weekly trend. All right. We're in a weekly trend now and we have weekly confirmation of the ADX. So when ADX is strong, above a rise, when the ADX is confirming the trend of a stock, then that's bullish. Okay. When low ADX is showing up, when we're going through a sideways consolidation pattern, then that is bullish, okay? We're going to draw trend lines on price and we're going to wait for a breakout. That's assuming that the higher time frame is in good shape. Let me give you a different example of how that could play out. Let's look at a stock like Kinder Morgan. Now, on the monthly chart, we showed a pullback to a rising 18-month line with tremendous power in the ADX. ADX showing a lot of strength, okay? So during this pullback, we can look to be a buyer. Now, during this pullback, we created a low ADX condition on this time frame, all right? So I've got ADX strength here, I want to buy a pullback in, and then I've got a low ADX pattern on this time frame, I want to buy a breakout in. All right, so we're buying a pullback on this time frame, but we're triggering ourselves in using the lower time frame trend line break, which in this case I would draw a trend line something like this. We're buying the breakout. Now we're back in this monthly trend. All right, the goal is to get in on the higher time frame strength. Okay, and now actually let's look at what's happening on this time frame. We have good strength on the ADX weekly, so we can look to play a pullback in this time frame. Now it might not give us that. Right now we still have low ADX condition, but we're going to need this to turn back around and get back above these moving averages on the daily chart to trigger us in. All right, now if that were to take place with this ADX strength, that's a good sign. So this is a good sign where we have strength in the ADX confirming the move to the upside, but it doesn't necessarily mean we buy because we have to get a setup on the lower time frame. I hope this makes sense to you. So the combinations we're looking for, now I want to show you something else. Let's just look at what weekly, I'm going to expand this. We're going to look at the market. And notice where we had a low ADX pattern where we're making higher highs and higher lows, and we had strength in the ADX, strength in the ADX, and then it disappears. You see how that disappeared here? Well, that's a really negative signal. We should be really looking for and seeing if there's volatility, which there was. If there's an increase in volatility and we have this pattern in place, then we know there's downside risk. And we need to be very cautious, probably hedging our portfolio and waiting for some type of a decline to take place. All right. Same thing happened before the bear market in 2022. Look at how this was moving up and we showed good confirmation, and then here it died out. And then right about here is where the volatility started to increase. Okay. So at that point, we have that combination. Well, we should be on the lookout for a reversal in this time frame. In this situation, it turned into a bear market. Okay, so we constantly want to be on the lookout for that to take place. Now, I'll tell you that we had this run to the upside and then we got this drop, but we never showed ADX strength here, so it's not really the same type of pattern. I was leery of this move as it was going up, and it really started to flatten out as far back as October, but it didn't give us that classic signal because we needed to show strength first and then show low ADX after it's going to a new high. You go to a new high, increase in volatility, low ADX pattern in place. We want to be really careful here, buying puts on our buying puts in the market or hedging the portfolio in some way, shape, or form is the strategy I teach my subscribers, and that is how I would go about using ADX, both strong and weak. All right. I hope this makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions.